Welcome to Tri-Valley Sports Final, your program for the best in local sports action. On this week's show, we'll take a look at some District 57 Little League Tournament action. Brody Dilks leads the way as the Dublin 8 screen take on the Livermore 9B All-Stars at the Granada Invitational Tournament for 9 and unders. Clark Mitchell comes up big as the Livermore 8 and under All-Stars face their crosstown rivals, the Granada 9 and under Golds, at the Granada Invitational 9 and under tournament. And Mateo Duterte leads a 12-hit attack as the Granada 12 and under All-Stars battle the Pleasanton 12 and under All-Stars at the Dana Taguchi Memorial 12 and under 50-70 tournament. All that and much more right here on Tri-Valley Sports Final. Welcome back to Tri-Valley Sports Final. I'm Ian Bartholomew. On this week's show, we'll feature action from the Granada Invitational Little League Tournament for 9 and unders with Granada, Livermore, and Dublin. Plus, we'll have semifinal action from the Dana Taguchi Memorial 12 and under 50-70 tournament as the Granada 12 and under All-Stars square off against Pleasanton. But to get us started with a crosstown rivalry matchup in Livermore, it's my co-host Tim Sabrandi.
Great, thank you, Ian. And it was a great crosstown rivalry indeed as the Livermore 8 and under All-Stars squared off against the Granada 9 and under Gold squad up in the quarterfinals of the Granada Invitational for 9 and unders. Livermore came into the matchup with a record of 20-4. Granada, meanwhile, entered with a mark of 7-10-1. And here we pick up the action. There you see Granada trying to rally. They're trailing 9-5 at this point, bottom of the fifth, but there would still be a lot of action left as we see Owen Thomas and Tommy Flores on base. Cannon Sprader walk. So the bases at this point loaded for Granada, looking to get back in it. Livermore defense, though, comes up. Here we see the bunt, but the runner is out at the plate. So nice job there on the force out, Livermore getting the out. Then we see it again, the comebacker to the pitcher, Dean Keaty, throws home for the force. So great job there preventing 2 runs. But here we see Sebastian Johnston. He would get a single to the left, and on this one, there would be multiple runs coming in to score 2 runs. Score at this point, Livermore 9-7. And then the big hit. This would come from Andrew Fulton. He doubles to deep left. That's gonna end up going all the way to the fence. Jackson Miller coming around to score. So Granada puts up 3 runs in their half of the inning, trailing 9-8 going into the top of the 6th. Livermore, though, trying to get some insurance runs. Here we see Kaleo Bonilla walking. So Bonilla at first, and then the wild pitch, Bonilla would end up going to second, but he would end up being left stranded. So trailing 9-8, Granada, Owen Yen gets this triple rolling all the way to the fence. So in scoring position right out of the gate, sliding into third, no throw. And then that'll set up an RBI opportunity for Carter Greenaway, who would single to left. Yen would end up scoring. We're all knotted up at 9 apiece at this point. And there is Greenaway at first. So the next batter up would be Tate Pavi, grounds to third. And the runner, though, would be safe as Greenaway gets a nice jump. And Granada threatening Tommy Flores now. That one just kind of drops in for an infield single. So the bases are loaded. So a golden opportunity for Granada to take the lead. But Livermore would end up escaping. Look at this nice defensive play. Calvin Stein fields the ball, steps on second for the force. Granada's fired up as we head into the 7th. Extra innings knotted up at 9 apiece. So Elijah Valena would be on second. He's the ghost runner. Wild pitch. Valena would end up going to third. But here we see some good defense. The bouncer to third, Jackson Miller throws him out at the plate. Nice fielding, nice throw, nice catch, nice tag. So wild pitch, Nico Kaplanis now would end up going to second. So Livermore still threatening despite not getting the run across. or actually here's Livermore on the offensive end. Now we see Jacob Tunnicliffe with the infield single. Dean Keedy would end up walking, so the bases are loaded. And then here we see Livermore's Clark Mitchell. Bloop single to left. Kaplanis and Tunnicliffe would end up scoring. Livermore up at this point by a score of 11-9. And he's getting the crowd fired up. Calvin Stein now walking. And now next batter would be Wyatt Harrison. He would walk. Keedy would end up scoring as the bases were loaded, so Livermore pushes this lead out to 12-9. And then another insurance run here as Clark Mitchell slides home safely. The ball gets away from the catcher, so Livermore up 13-9. Granada has some work to do. Ghost runner Constance Brady are second. He would end up going to third. Jackson Miller would ground out on this play. Spreeder would score, but Livermore will take the out as that gets them one out closer to putting this one away. And ultimately, that's exactly what they would end up doing. Keedy on the mound. And look at that. Gets the final out on the comebacker. And Livermore celebrates a wild one. 13-10 is the final score. There you see him get lifted by Mitchell. There's the final score. These teams combined for 34 hits. Livermore led by a touchdown, 7-0. And again, 9-5 when we picked up the coverage. Granada rallied to tie. Clark Mitchell and Calvin Stein, though, each having 3 hits for Livermore. Connor and Sprader, meanwhile, Andrew Fulton, Owen Yen, Jackson Miller also had 3 hits for Granada. So a wild game, but Livermore ultimately gets the win.
Yeah, and Livermore was up 7-0 at the bottom of the third, so it really was a great comeback by Granada, led by Fulton and Yen, their big hits. But Mitchell came back in extra innings, got that big hit to drive in two, and they went on from there.
You know, and I would say this, even with the 34 runs, there was also some really good defensive plays, too, in this game. I mean, so you think about 13-10, kind of a wild one, but the defense was also on point. There could have actually been a lot more runs scored if it wasn't for that.
And that's going to do it for these teams. Up next, we'll have more quarterfinal action from the Granada Invitational as the Dublin 8s Green face the Livermore 9B All-Stars Cowboys. Please stay with us. Welcome back to Tri-Valley Sports Final. A chance to advance to the semifinals of the Granada Little League Invitational Tournament for 9 and unders was on the line recently as the Dublin Little League 8s Green squared off against the Livermore 9B All-Star Cowboys. Dublin entered this game with a record of 19-7. Livermore, meanwhile, came into the contest with a mark of 16-5-1. The teams met 3 times earlier this season, with Livermore winning 2 of the 3. All 3 contests were decided by 1 run, so this one promised to be a close one. We go back out to Livermore. Dublin breaks the huddle, pick up the action in the second inning. Jake Dilks gets things started for Dublin with a leadoff walk. Next batter, Brody Dilks, flies to center. This one drops for a hit, and Jake Dilks moves to second. With Jackson Ruffino at the plate, the pitch gets away. Runners advance to second and third. Jake Glavin would then ground out. Nice defensive play here. Jake Dilks scores as Dublin grabs a 1-0 lead. In the third, Livermore tries to rally. Jace Garcia heads to first after being hit by a pitch. Wyatt Watson then squares around to bunt. Pitcher Kanoa Lorenzo gets the out at first, but Garcia moves to second. Austin Shaw then pops to center. Levi Zaghetti charges and makes a great diving catch to end the inning. That one saves at least a run. We move ahead now to the bottom of the third. Dax Banks at the plate, and he rips it to right. This one's in the gap. Livermore tracks it down, but Banks races around second and hustles into third with a stand-up triple. Nice hit there. He would, however, be left stranded. We go to the fourth. Jackson Bellici hits a comebacker. Kai Lorenzo fields, throws to first, but Bellici beats it out. Oliver Saindon then chops to second. Ethan Cam makes a great play and flips to first for the out, while Belici moves to second. Luke Van Roll then hits a popper. This is a tough play. It drops, and everyone's safe. A fielder's choice would advance Belici to third, Van Roll to second. Cillian Carpenter then at the plate, and he walks. Rather, he was hit by a pitch. Bases loaded now for Christian Tabor, who flies to right. It drops. Belici and Van Roll both score as Livermore jumps on top 2-1. In the bottom of the fourth, Kai Lorenzo walks. Moments later, he is off and running, stealing second, standing up. Ethan Cam then walks. Runners would move to second and third for Brody Dilks, who delivers with a base hit to center. Carpenter cuts it off, gets it back in the infield. The throw home is not in time to get Cam. He scores. Dilks 2-run single puts Dublin up 3-2. He likes it. Big hit by number 5. We move ahead now to the fifth. Dane Nevin on second after a single and a wild pitch. Jace Garcia hits a hard shot to right. Niven rounds third and sprints home. That ties the game at 3. A pair of passed balls would move Garcia to second base and then over to third. Wyatt Watson then walks. That puts runners at the corners. Owen Sadin at the plate, and he goes opposite field for a bloop single. Garcia and Watson both score as Livermore regains the lead 5-3. We move on to the bottom of the fifth. Jacob Clavin walks. That's followed by a walk to Hudson Nguyen. With number 44, Dax Banks at the plate. The pitch gets away. Braden Kuna slides in safely at third. Banks then walks. That loads the bases for Richard Watson, who also walks. That drives in Kuna to cut the lead to 5-4. Up steps Kai Lorenzo, who also draws a free pass. That plays Nguyen, and we are all tied up at 5. Next batter, Levi Zaghetti. He's hit by a pitch. Banks scores as Dublin regains the lead 6-5. We move ahead now to the bottom of the 6th inning. Last chance for Livermore. Luke Van Roll gets things started with an infield single. He had 2 hits in the game. Moments later, the speedy Van Roll is off and running. He steals second. He would eventually steal third, but pitcher Jake Dilks bears down and strikes out the side here, getting the final out. Clutch pitching by the right-hander. Dublin rushes the mound to celebrate as they rally to edge the Livermore 9B All-Stars 6-5. There you see the final score as Dublin rallies for 3 runs in the bottom of the 5th to earn the win. Dublin would go on to win the tournament championship, first by defeating Danville 9B Blue 7-3 in the semis, then by edging Livermore, the 8-and-under All-Stars, who we saw in our first segment, 2-1 in the championship game. So congratulations to Dublin as they improved to 21-7. Great effort in this game and great season by Livermore. You look at their overall record, they play very well in this game.
I think before we've covered and we see lots of hits, but the defense, I've noticed in recent years, definitely improving.
Yep, and that'll do it for the 9-and-unders. Up next, we're going to go to the 12-and-unders as the Granada All-Stars face Pleasanton in the semifinals of the Dana Takaguchi 12-and-under 50-70 Memorial Tournament. Please stay with us.
Welcome back to Tri-Valley Sports Final. So there's a chance to advance to the championship game of the Dana Takaguchi Memorial as the 12 and under 50-70 Little League tournament was up for grabs as the Granada 12 and under All-Stars faced the Pleasanton 12 and under All-Stars. Granada came into this game with a record of 7-4. Pleasanton, meanwhile, entered with a mark of 5-6. Granada won the previous 3 matchups between the two teams during the regular season. And here we pick things up. Osage Station in Danville. A rich tradition of baseball. And top of the second, Jordan Portillo on second for Pleasanton. He would end up advancing to third on the wild pitch. But here's where we see Granada's defense step in as the liner to first base, Caleb Savello. Then he throws to third to double off the runner. So the rare 3 unassisted 5 double play, Granada gets out of the inning. Bottom of the second out, Vincent Thielen gets things going with the base hit to center. And then as we often see, great defense in one half followed by great offense in the other. Caleb Savello getting the base hit to center, following the great defensive play that he made. But speaking of great defensive plays, here we see 6-4-3. And there it is, Ian, more of that great defense that's coming to define the season. Inning ends right there. Top of the third now, Liam Thatch. No great defense that's going to stop that one. That's a triple deep into left. So Pleasanton threatening there. And then just good, solid, fundamental baseball. You got a runner at third with less than 2 outs. Here's Henry Stearns sending it to right. That ball would end up being dropped. Might have scored anyway on a sac fly, but nonetheless, the run is scored. Pleasanton now up 1-0. Wild pitch. Stearns ends up going to second. That'll fall by a walk by Zachary McNutt. And then Colton Cruz also induces a walk, so the bases are loaded. And after an overthrow on an attempted pickoff at third, Stearns would end up scoring. Pleasanton on top 2-0 as we go to the bottom of the third. Granada's Jack Moon on base. He would end up stealing second. And then it would be Bowen Marr. He would double to center. Moon would end up scoring. Marr would end up holding at second. And at this point, Pleasanton's lead cut to 2-1. But here's where Pleasanton, we see the defense as catcher Liam Thatch goes out the runner at third. So the inning will end with Pleasanton holding on to that 2-1 lead. And then looking to extend it, Jordan Portillo grounds third, but he would end up reaching on the air. But then this is where the defense comes into play. 6-4-3 on the putout. So that would end up ending the threat. So now we go to the next half inning. Pleasanton's Aiden Johnson, base hit to center. Then he would end up going to second on the throwing error. Now we see the pop up to second. Granada, Chase Pavona makes the catch to retire the side. So now we go to the bottom of the fourth. Granada looking to get things going. Lucas Ward gets the single to center. Next batter up would be Mateo Duterte. He would end up hitting the bloop double into left, and that one gets away. Ward would end up going to third, and again, Duterte at second. Next batter up is Colin Kinney. He grounds to short. The throw to first is in time, but Ward at third base would end up scoring, so this game would be knotted up at 2 apiece. Next, Granada would take their first lead of the game as Vincent Thielen gets the base hit to right. Colin Kinney would end up scoring. And there you see Granada now up 3-2. And Granada's Caleb Savello trying to help break things open. He gets the double to left. Thielen would end up scoring. And Granada would go on top 4-2. And then to try to extend that insurance run a little bit further, Merlin Newton hits his own double. This one would go to center. Savello would end up scoring. Granada up 5-2. And here we see the fly to left. It's caught to end the inning. So now we go to the bottom of the fifth. It would be Jack Moon hitting the infield single. And then Moon would end up stealing second. Bolton would end up advancing to third on a wild pitch. Bowen Marr walks. With the runner at third, Chase Bavona grounds to second. Moore would end up scoring. Granada continues to extend their lead up 6-2 at this point. Then we see Lucas Ward. He would end up getting hit by a pitch. So he's at first. And then to clear the bases and put this game away, Mateo Duterte, he hits the triple. I think the defense is still chasing after that one. No fence at Osage. And all runners would be home. 3 runs ultimately scoring for Granada, and they would go on to win by a score of 9-2. So great job there, Mateo Duterte driving in those 3 last runs. Granada rallies from a 2-0 deficit to earn the win. Duterte, Lucas Ward, Vincent Thielen, Caleb Savello each picked up 2 hits for Granada, while Liam Thatch, he ended up for Pleasanton with 2 hits, including a triple. Granada would go on to face Danville for the tournament championship, and they would win once again 5-3, rallying from a 3-0 deficit to capture the title. So congratulations to them, and again, good baseball, and the fact they came down from that early deficit and really put this game away.
And we're going to see a lot of players from both these teams star in the future at their high schools.
Undoubtedly.
And that's going to wrap things up. Right after these messages, we'll be back. Please stay with us. Welcome back to Tri-Valley Sports File. We just saw some Little League tournament action featuring teams from Pleasanton, Livermore, and Dublin. Next week, we're going to have more. Some big tournaments taking place include the Dana Takaguchi Memorial Tournament for teams 11 and under, the Granada Invitational Tournament for teams 10 and under, and of course, the Banana Bowl Tournament for 12 and under teams. We had some action from that in past years on Tri-Valley Sports Final.
This time of year, you have some great youth baseball and all these different age groups, high level. It's fun to see the kids out there.
That will do it, though, for this edition of Tri-Valley Sports Final. Tim Sereni and Bartholomew, thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.